Before America ever celebrated Doug Williams hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, the NFL had already made up its mind about men who looked like him. For decades, coaches and owners quietly agreed that the quarterback position belonged to white players, not because of talent, but because of an old and unchallenged belief. The belief that black athletes could run, jump, and entertain, but could not think, lead, or command a locker room on the biggest stage in professional sports. A young Doug Williams grew up studying plays, mastering reads, and commanding huddles long before scouts ever shook his hand. But no matter how good he became, the unwritten rule of football's power structure followed him at every turn. Black quarterbacks were too emotional, too unpredictable, too undisciplined, and not intelligent enough to be trusted under center. That wasn't a rumor. That was an accepted truth inside NFL buildings. So when Doug Williams finally walked into the Super Bowl, he carried more than a franchise's hopes. He carried every insult, every stereotype, every closed door, and every talented black quarterback who had been benched, converted to receiver, or erased from history simply because of the color of their skin. But what happened next didn't just rewrite Super Bowl records, it rewrote the power structure of the NFL forever. Long before Doug Williams ever took a professional snap, the NFL already had a blueprint for what a quarterback was supposed to look like, and that blueprint did not include a black face under center. The quarterback position was considered the executive office of the football field. The thinker, the strategist, the man who controlled the clock, commanded the huddle, and processed complex defenses in real time. White owners and general managers openly believed that black athletes were physically gifted but lacked the decision-making ability and mental capacity to handle those responsibilities. Those phrases were whispered in scouting reports, printed in newspapers, and spoken in front office without embarrassment or hesitation. From the 1950s through the late 1970s, racial steering was normal. Talented black quarterbacks who lit up college football were told they were to be converted to wide receiver or defensive back the moment they entered the NFL. It didn't matter if they broke NCAA records, won championships, or carried entire programs. The unwritten rule was simple. A black quarterback would not be the face of an NFL franchise. Eldridge Dickey became the first black quarterback ever drafted in the first round in 1968, but he never got a fair chance to start. Joe Gilliam outplayed Terry Bradshaw in Pittsburgh's 1974 camp and still got buried. Marlin Brisco shattered rookie passing records with the Broncos and was converted into a receiver the following season. It wasn't a matter of talent, it was policy. Every statistical accomplishment by these men was treated as a contradiction to an ideology the league wanted to protect. If a black quarterback succeeded, it exposed the lie. If he failed, it reinforced the stereotype. The NFL was never neutral. It was determined to prove itself right. That's the environment Doug Williams walked into, a league built on the belief that his success was impossible, and that made his journey more than football. It made every throw an act of rebellion. Doug Williams entered the NFL in 1978, drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That moment should have been historic, celebrated, and embraced as a sign that the NFL was finally ready to evolve. Instead, Williams walked into one of the most racially tense front offices in football and found himself fighting battles that had nothing to do with the defensive schemes or touchdown passes. Williams turned around a franchise that had been the laughingstock of the league. Tampa Bay went from expansion embarrassment to playoff contender, and Doug Williams was central to that transformation. He wasn't just making throws, he was erasing losing culture and giving the Buccaneers national credibility. But inside the building, Williams was treated like a replaceable part. His contract negotiations became a public humiliation. Despite being a rising star with a playoff resume, his salary ranked among the lowest paid starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and he was even paid less than some backup linemen. This wasn't just a financial dispute, it was a message. The Buccaneers front office didn't see Williams as an equal, as a franchise leader, or as a man who deserved market value. They saw him as a pioneer they could underpay because he was supposed to be grateful to simply exist in the league. Williams asked for a salary increase that would still have placed him near the bottom of the league's starting quarterbacks, but ownership refused. Instead of valuing the man who had rebuilt their team, they let him walk away and essentially said, "There will always be another quarterback, but there may never be another one bold enough to demand fairness." Williams was forced out of the NFL not because of talent, but because a black quarterback wanting to be paid like a leader was considered a threat. That decision would change football history because his next destination made him unstoppable and it exposed how wrong the NFL truly was. After Tampa Bay refused to pay him fairly, Doug Williams made one of the most stunning decisions of his era. He left the NFL entirely. Not because he couldn't play, not because he was injured, and not because he lost his edge, but because the NFL refused to respect him as a franchise quarterback. So Williams took his talent to the United States Football League, the upstart league willing to do what Tampa Bay would not, pay him like a leader. The moment Williams arrived, something became obvious. All those myths about black quarterbacks lacking intelligence or decision making suddenly evaporated. Williams didn't just succeed in the USFL, he dominated it. Coaches trusted him with full offensive control. Front offices treated him like the face of a franchise. Reporters began openly questioning why the NFL had ever let him leave in the first place. In 3 seasons with the Oklahoma and Arizona Outlaws, Williams threw for massive yardage totals, called audibles at the line, and became one of the most respected field generals in the entire league. Offensive coordinators praised his preparation, patience, and leadership, the very qualities the NFL had spent decades claiming black quarterbacks did not possess. The USFL gave Doug what the NFL would not: economic dignity and professional validation. The money wasn't just bigger, it was symbolic. It proved that Williams deserved to be treated like the quarterback he already was, not a charity case, not a novelty, not a marketing experiment, but a man capable of building playoff teams and carrying an offense with his mind as much as his arm. Every touchdown in the USFL was more than a stat. It was a reminder that the NFL had driven him away because of prejudice, not performance. And the more Williams excelled, the more pressure built on the league that once insisted men like him couldn't lead from the pocket. The stage was being set for the moment the NFL could no longer deny his greatness, and that moment would come under the brightest lights on earth: the Super Bowl. In January of 1988, after years of discrimination, underpayment, and exile, Doug Williams finally stood where no black quarterback had ever been allowed to stand: under center at the Super Bowl. The Washington Redskins were heavy underdogs against the Denver Broncos, and every sports show in America repeated the same question: can a black quarterback handle this moment? The doubt wasn't hidden, it was a national conversation. On the biggest football stage in the world, Williams took a brutal shot early in the first quarter. He twisted his knee, collapsed in pain, and left the game. Commentators immediately returned to the old narrative. Maybe he's too emotional, maybe the stage is too big. It felt like history was repeating itself again. Another moment where stereotypes were waiting to be confirmed. Then, Williams stood up. He returned to the field and delivered the most explosive quarter in Super Bowl history. In the second quarter alone, Williams threw for 4 touchdown passes, shredding Denver's elite defense, reading coverages like a surgeon, and turning the game into a track meet. He earned Super Bowl MVP, threw for 340 yards, and led Washington to a 42-10 blowout that stunned the football world. But what mattered wasn't the scoreboard, it was the symbolism. Millions of viewers watched a black quarterback dissect an NFL defense with intelligence, precision, composure, and total command. Every stereotype collapsed in real time. Every excuse about leadership or mental ability vanished under the weight of Williams' brilliance. The NFL had spent decades saying that black athletes belonged everywhere except at quarterback. Doug Williams erased that in one unforgettable night. He didn't just win a Super Bowl, he forced the league to confront the lie it had protected for generations. But even with the Lombardi Trophy and MVP honors, equality didn't magically appear. Williams won the battle, not the war. Doug Williams' Super Bowl victory should have created a new era of opportunity for black quarterbacks. Logic says that if a black man could walk into the biggest pressure moment in football and dominate, the league would finally abandon its old stereotypes and start drafting, developing, and trusting more black players under center. But the NFL was not built on logic, it was built on power. Even after Williams destroyed every myth in one night, black quarterbacks did not suddenly become mainstream. Executives still steered young black signal callers toward different positions. College stars with NFL-level decision-making were still told they needed to switch to receiver or play cornerback for the good of the team. The system wasn't designed to give them a chance. It was designed to protect a belief structure that had been in place for 50 years. Williams exposed the lie, but the system wasn't ready to surrender. Instead, he was often treated as an anomaly, not a blueprint. The media would say, Doug Williams is different, or you can't assume every black quarterback can lead like he can. It allowed the league to celebrate his accomplishment publicly while quietly maintaining the same scouting bias behind closed doors. Financial inequality didn't disappear either. Black quarterbacks continued receiving shorter contracts, lower guarantees, and fewer long-term commitments, even when their production matched or exceeded their white counterparts. The message was subtle but consistent. We'll let you play, but we won't fully trust you. Williams didn't walk away angry, he walked away aware. He knew that his Super Bowl wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of a slower, harder fight for representation, respect, and equal opportunity under center. But the legacy of that game would grow louder with every young quarterback who entered the league and dared to say, I belong here too. And the next generation was listening. Doug Williams didn't change the NFL overnight. He didn't force owners to immediately rewrite their scouting models, and he didn't magically erase bias with a 4-touchdown quarter. But over time, his achievement became something more powerful than a stereotype breaker. It became a reference point football could no longer ignore. Every scout meeting, every draft room, every quarterback evaluation after 1988 carried a new, uncomfortable truth. If a black quarterback was struggling, it wasn't because black men couldn't lead. Doug Williams had already proven they could. It forced scouts to look deeper, and it created cracks in the ideology that had survived untouched since the league's earliest days. In the 1990s and early 2000s, those cracks became openings. Warren Moon finally received Hall of Fame recognition, something unthinkable for a black quarterback during his playing years. Randall Cunningham, Steve McNair, Donovan McNabb, Dante Culpepper, Michael Vick, and eventually Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes didn't just appear. They came from a system that slowly became less afraid to let black quarterbacks run the offense and command the huddle. Williams didn't just win a championship, he shifted the burden of proof. Before him, black quarterbacks had to justify why they should even be allowed in the building. After him, the NFL had to justify why it was still clinging to outdated beliefs. Today, when Patrick Mahomes walks onto a Super Bowl field, when Lamar Jackson earns a franchise-defining contract, or when Geno Smith resurrects his career and finally gets respected as a leader, Doug Williams' fingerprints are there. They are in every guaranteed dollar, every offensive scheme built around black talent, every broadcast that analyzes brilliance instead of questioning leadership. Doug Williams didn't ask for permission. He forced the league to evolve, even when the league resisted evolution. And that's what makes his legacy bigger than football. It's about equality, visibility, power, and the right to lead. Doug Williams didn't just break a barrier, he exposed a belief system. His Super Bowl win simply wasn't about arm strength or play calling, it was about dignity, equality, and the right for a black quarterback to stand on the same stage and be treated with the same respect as anyone else. And long after the confetti fell, the legacy of that win has been building quietly for decades. Today's stars are not starting from scratch. They are building on Doug Williams' shoulders. But the fight for fair treatment, equal pay, and equal opportunity never truly ends. The past reminds us that greatness can be overlooked, underpaid, and pushed aside until someone refuses to accept the old rules. Doug Williams refused, and because he did, football will never be the same. If you enjoyed this story and want more hidden legends, forgotten pioneers, and true history from the game you love, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Old School Sundays, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to look in the comments section and click the link to my store where you can get NFL Game Day official jerseys for $40.